Good evening, dear students. Welcome to the English Canvas. Today, we begin our English literature series with one of the most significant post war British poets, Philip Larkin. His time period was about 1922 to 1985. Yes. So he often described as the poet of ordinary experience. Larkin's works capture the complexities of modern life, human isolation, and the inevitable passage of time. His poetry stands apart for its conversational tone, honesty, and emotional restraint. So, he was born on 9th of August in 1922 in Coventry, England. He was the second child of Sidney and Eva Larkin. His father, Sidney Larkin, was the city treasurer of Coventry and had a keen interest in literature and politics. He was particularly fascinated by German culture and even admired some aspects of Nazism and deeply affected Larkin's worldview. Larkin's early education took place at King Henry VIII School, Coventry, where he excelled academically. He was shy, introspective, and socially awkward, traits that would later reflect in his poems' themes of isolation and emotional reserve. In 1940, Larkin went to St. John's College, Oxford, where he studied English language and literature. At Oxford, he became friends with Kingsley Amis, who remained a lifelong friend and one of the key figures of the movement, a literary group that sought to reject modernist complexity and return to clarity and realism in poetry. Due to his poor eyesight, Larkin had a poor eyesight. Just because of that, he was declared unfit for military services during World War II. So this spared him the trauma of combat, but left him as a silent observer of a war torn world, shaping his detached and melancholic sensibility. After graduating in 1943 with a first class degree with a first class honors degree in English, Larkin worked as a librarian, a profession he held for the rest of his life. His longest tenure was at the University of Hull, where he served as a librarian from 1955 until his death in 1985, almost for 30 years. Though he led a quiet, almost reclusive life, his poems voice the silent anxieties of post war Britain. He never married in his life, though he had long relationships with Monica Jones, Maeve Brennan, and Betty McGrath. He died of esophageal cancer on 2nd December 1985 at the age of 63. Let's talk about his literary career and development. So Philip Larkin's literary career, his career can be divided into two phases. The early phase is about 1940s to 1950s. During this period, he published two novels and his first collection of poetry. So if we talk about his novels, so the first novel is Jill, which was published in 1946. The second one is A Girl in Winter. It was published in 1947, and before that, in 1945, his first collection of poems, The North Ship. Actually, this is not considered as the novel. So this is a separate thing. So his two novels, was published in 1946 and 1947. Jill and A Girl in Winter. These novels shows his interest in realism and in characters who struggle with isolation and inner conflict. So the themes, the themes in his novels are like isolation or inner conflict that would dominate his later poetry as well. And he had a collection of poems, the North Ship. The North Ship, which was published in 1945, was deeply influenced by W.B. Yeats. So, and it was filled with a sense of romanticism and mythic tone. So, however, it lacked the mature voice, and we later associate with Larkin. His literary career's later phase was about 1950s to 1980s. This is the period of his poetic maturity. This time period, this is known as his poetic era. This period talks about his poetic maturity. This style evolved the Yeatsian romanticism. हमने यहाँ पढ़ा ना कि ये जो काम था that was deeply influenced by W.B. Yeats. So basically his poetic era, his poetic time period, his style of writing poetry evolved from Yeats, and this is evolved from Yeatsian romanticism to a plain, realistic and conversational tone. He became associated with the movement. So this is the movement. So he became associated with the movement poets. This is actually an association for poets, right? So he became associated with the moment poets. This is a group actually. The movement is a group includes his friend Kingsley Amis, Donald Davy and Tom Gunn, who reacted against the obscurity of modernists like T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound. So Philip Larkin's poetry from this phase reflects English provincial life and ordinary people and their muted struggles. So this is about his two phases of writing, which is the time period of the two phases are 1940s to 1950s. This is for 10 years only, and the second one is 1950s to 1980s, 30 years. Almost 30 years, right? Let's talk about his literary style and themes. So Philip Larkin's poetry style is marked by clarity, precision and emotional restraint, right? So let's examine the major features of his poetry. The first point in this topic is simplicity and conversational tone. So actually ना होता क्या था कि Larkin believed poetry should be understood by the common reader. इसलिए उनका जो राइटिंग स्टाइल था पोएम का वो काफ़ी कॉन्वर्जेशनल टाइप था, काफ़ी ऑर्डिनरी लैंग्वेज में लिखा गया था, ताकि जो 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 पढ़ने वाला है उसको मतलब वो चाहते थे कि उनके जो रीडर रहे वो कॉमन लोग रहें, कॉमन रीडर्स हों. सो ही बिलीव दैट पोइट्री शुड बी अंडरस्टूड बाय द कॉमन रीडर. अक्सर क्या होता है कि पोइट्री के बहुत ही डीप मीनिंग होते हैं एंड मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल कांट रीच टू द डीप मीनिंग ऑफ द पोइट्री. तो वो इस बात पे बिलीव करते थे कि एक कॉमन रीडर भी उनकी पोइट्री को पढ़ सके. So he believed that poetry should be understood by the common reader. So his language is plain, colloquial, often resembling natural speech rather than high poetic diction. जैसे इनकी एक पोएम है चर्च गोइंग. सो उसमें भी बहुत ही आराम से बिगिन करते हैं अपनी पोएम को, लाइक वंस आई एम श्योर देयर इज़ नथिंग गोइंग ऑन, आई स्टेप इनसाइड लेटिंग द डोर थर्ड शट. अभी मैंने यहाँ कहीं लिखा नहीं है पोएम, लेकिन अगर आपने ध्यान से सुना है तो यू मस्ट गेट द आइडिया ऑफ हिज पोइट्री. So this informal beginning hides deep philosophical reflection on religion, faith and mortality. The second point is themes of time, death, and transience. So Larkin constantly reminds readers of human mortality and fleeting nature of happiness. His poetry reflects the post-war disillusionment and loss of faith in religion and progress. Right? In one of his poetry, Obeyed, which was written near the end of his life. So he wrote the poem Obeyed in his last days of his life. He directly confronts the fear of death. So in this poem, his tone is sentimental yet deeply human. Right? The third point is irony and realism. Larkin was a realist. He rejects idealism and romanticism. He rejected these two ideas, idealism and romanticism. That is why we can say that Larkin was a realist. He believes in realism, right? His observations are tinged with irony, sometimes even cynicism, and but never cruelty. We have an example of his poetry in is Mr. Bleeny. So the poet reflects on the emphasis of the ordinary man's life. So in this poem, Bleeny, he just describes the very ordinary life of Mr. Bleeny. Here, Larkin captures the bleakness of modern existence and subtle empathy. The fourth and very important point is nostalgia and English provincial life. Right? So basically है क्या Philip Larkin's poetic world, his poetic world is inseparable from the landscape, rhythms, and mood of provincial England, right? So he describes the small towns, the railway stations, libraries, suburban streets, and quiet cathedrals far removed from the metropolitan glamour. So his sense of nostalgia, however, is not merely sentimental longing for the past, and it is reflective awareness of time's passing. It's a recognition of the loss of simplicity and a meditation on England's vanishing identity in a rapidly modernizing world, right? So let's talk about the meaning of nostalgia in Larkin's vision. Actually, in Larkin's poetry, nostalgia is not about idealizing the past, but it is about feeling the ache. It is about feeling the ache of transience. He often portrays moments when the past seems both intimate and unreachable. So, the moments that reveal how time alters everything yet leaves behind traces of memory. Larkin's nostalgia carries a tone of quiet melancholy, born not of romantic yearning but of a deep historical and personal consciousness. He knew the England of his childhood, the pre-war provincial world with its stable routines and certainties, was the slowly fading. So thus his nostalgia becomes an emotional and cultural register of loss. There are some of the losses, like the loss of innocence, loss of spiritual faith, and the loss of communal life that once defined English society. In this way, nostalgia in Larkin is both personal and national. It is the whole longing of an individual and the lament of a civilization. And the idea of English provincial life, Larkin actually deliberately distances himself from the metropolitan modernism of T.S. Eliot or the cosmopolitan vision of W.H. Auden. Of that, instead of those, he embraces the provincial English setting, the modest, local, and ordinary world of small towns, railway journeys, churchyards, and post offices. For Larkin, England's essence was not in London's intellectual or political life, but in the provincial landscapes where the rhythm of ordinary existence continued undisturbed. He once remarked that he preferred to live in the hull, so on the periphery of things, because it allowed him a detached and honest vision of modern life, right? So this self imposed distance is symbolic. Larkin's provincialism is more stance, a refusal to be reduced by intellectual pretense or cultural fashion. His poetry celebrates the authenticity of everyday life, grounding his art in realism and locality, right? Now the fifth point is anti-romantic and anti-modernist stance. So Philip Larkin's poetic philosophy stands in direct opposition to both romantic idealism and modernist experimentation. He rejected the excessive emotion and escapist imagination of the romantics, as well as the intellectual obscurity and fragmentation of modernists. Instead, Larkin rooted his poetry in clarity, simplicity, and realism, focusing on ordinary human experiences and the limitation of life. So he rejects the romantic idealism. So that is why we can call him anti-romantic. Larkin's poetry resists the romantic idea that art and imagination can transcend reality, while where the romantics glorified nature, love, and uh, emotion, Larkin sees disappointment, decay, and ordinariness in his poems, like Deceptions and The Less Deceived. He portrays a world of stripped illusion. He refuses to romanticize love or youth. Instead, he shows them as temporary and fragile. His view of nature is also anti romantic and not a source of inspiration but a reminder of human isolation and mortality. Thus, while poets like Wordsworth and Keats found beauty in the sublime, Larkin found meaning in the banal and inevitable truths of existence. He is very anti-modernist stance. It means he is he is in the opposition to modernist complexity. Larkin also rejects this modernist movement, especially the experimental style of T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound. We believe that poetry should be accessible. Sorry, he believed that poetry should be accessible and emotionally direct. It should not be, it should not be coded in symbols or intellectual puzzles. Larkin once said modernist poetry seemed designed to make the reader feel stupid. His diction is plain, conversational, and deliberately anti elitist. He avoided Oscar illusions and preferred the language of common people. So for Larkin, poetry was not about form and abstraction, but about communication and emotional honesty. So he got associated with the movement of poets. So Larkin's anti-romantic and anti-modernist stance, he leanings, was shared by his contemporary in the movement in he joined this group in 1950s. It's a 1950s literary group including Kingsley Amis, Donald Davy, and Elizabeth Jennings. Actually, the poets in this group, they emphasized rationality, restraint, and irony. Their poetry was English, domestic, realistic, and their poetry rejects both romantic grandeur and modernist elitism. Larkin's poetry became the quintessential expression of this reactionary stance, grounded in clarity of emotion and economy of language, right? So his poetry reflects the realism and skepticism as a core value. At the heart of Larkin's anti romanticism lies skepticism, a belief that human life offer no transient meaning or spiritual comfort, right? So, this is, I think, more than sufficient. that we have discussed. Now let's go to the next point, his major work, right? So his first major work is The North Ship. So it was published in 1949. So this work actually marks the beginning of his poetic journey, and though it is stylistically different from his later mature work, it provides a fascinating insight into his evolving artistic vision. The collection reflects a transitional phase combining early influences, especially W.B. Yeats and romantic symbolism, with the seeds of the realist, skeptical tone that would later define him. So, The North Ship was published in 1945 during the final months of World War II. Larkin was only 22 years old when he wrote this masterpiece. He wrote most of the poems while studying at the University of Oxford. तब ये ऑक्सफोर्ड में पढ़ा करते थे जब ये कलेक्शन था लिखा था. And this collection's tone is melancholic, reflective and idealistic, revealing a young poet still searching for his authentic voice. Larkin himself later admired that the book was full of Yeatsian pretensions, yet it remains crucial in understanding his artistic evolution from imitation to individuality. The title is North Ship is a symbolic and allegorical. The North traditionally represents the coldness. North Pole आपने देखा होगा ना कि हमारी अर्थ में North Pole है, बहुत ही ज़्यादा cold है, darkness है, isolation है वहाँ पर. And the ship, it symbolizes the journey of life or the journey of fate. So in the poem, 3 ships sail in different directions. Two ships go toward the sunlit sea, representing those who pursue happiness or success. And the third ship, sailing northward, chooses a harder and colder path, the path of truth, solitude, and self-aware. So this northward ship symbolizes the poet himself, and the poet who refuses the easy way of illusion or pleasure, choosing instead the lonely pursuit of authenticity and understanding. Thus, the poem anticipates the break, realism, and emotional restraint that will later define Larkin's mature work. इसके जो थीम है वो बहुत ही काफ़ी क्लियर हैं. इसके थीम है आइसोलेशन, फेट, टाइम एंड ट्रेजियंस, death and the search of meaning, romantic idealism versus reality, right? The next is The Less Deceased, which was published in 1955. So this is a landmark collection in post-war British poetry. It established Larkin as one of the most important and distinctive voices of 20th century. The volume represents his artistic maturity, marking a decisive break from the romantic idealism and Yeatsian symbolism of the North Ship. In Less Deceived, Larkin fully embraced realism, irony, and emotional restraint. And this work, qualities that became the signature of both his own poetry and the movement poets of which he belonged, right? So Larkin was working as a librarian at the time at the University of Hull during this period, a setting that reinforced his connection with the provincial English life. So the collection reflects the mood. This collection reflects the mood of post-war England, where people were trying to find meaning in an age of disillusionment, austerity, and lost faith. So the title, The Less Deceived, suggests a state of clear-eyed realism, to see the world not through illusion or grand ideals, but as it truly is. So the title comes from the Shakespeare's Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1, where Ophelia lament that she was deceived in love. तो आपने अगर शेक्सपियर का हैमलेट पढ़ा है तो उसका एक्ट 3 सीन 1 का द सीन 1 है जहाँ पर ओफेलिया शी वॉज लेमेंटिंग दैट शी वॉज डिसीव्ड इन लव. So for Larkin, it symbolizes the acceptance of truth over comforting lies. So he rejects the romantic and religious consolations that once gave the meaning to life. So the poet becomes the less deceived, not happier but more honest. So the title reflects Larkin's philosophy shift from illusion to realism, right? The next is the the Whitsun the Whitsun Weddings. So this was published in 1964, right? One second. Yes. So this is one of the Whitsun Weddings. This is one of the most significant poetry collection in modern English literature. It captures the spirit of post-war England and ordinary lives, quiet hopes and subtle emotions that lie beneath everyday existence, right? So with this volume, Larkin reached the peak of his poetic maturity, blending clarity of language, emotional depth, and philosophical insight. So, the collection's central themes revolve around time, change, love, and mortality, expressed through the lens of English provincial life. So it was published in 1964 by Faber and Faber. This is very Faber and Faber was very famous publication, uh, written during Larkin's year as a librarian at the University of Hull. The poems were composed between 1955 to 1964, a period of growing prosperity and social mobility in Britain. So this the collection's title poem is The Whitsun Wedding, and it was inspired by a train journey Larkin made from Hull to London one Whitsun Saturday. Whitsun का मतलब है the Sunday following Pentecost, traditionally a time for the weddings. So thus the entire volume symbolizes movement and transition which are personal, social and emotional. So the Whitsun wedding, this phrase Whitsun wedding, a specific English culture moment when couple married during the spring holiday weekend. So this is a metaphorical journey from innocence to awareness, from isolation to shared human experience. So the title of the poem becomes a microcosm of Larkin's worldview, where ordinary event revealing universal truth, right? The fourth is High Windows 1974. So it is one of Philip Larkin's most powerful and provocating poetry collections, representing the culmination of his poetic vision. It captures his mature style marked by stark realism, skepticism, and a deep reflection on the loss of faith and traditional meaning in the modern world. So um, Larkin also rejects the grand experimentation of modernism, no complex symbolism or fragmented structure, preferring clarity and emotional precision. His tone is often mocking, melancholic and stoically resigned, embodying his anti-romantic sensibility. The title of the poem is High Windows, can be read as a metaphor for transcendence and emptiness. It suggests both distance and aspiration, a glimpse into infinite space that evokes awe and insignificance. Larkin contrasts the old generation's religious repression with the young generation's sexual liberation, only to find both equally meaningless. In the final image, the deep blue air symbolizes a vast void, freedom that leads to nothingness. Thus, the poem concludes not with moral judgment but with existential realization, freedom for both sin and meaning. So, the High Windows in High Windows, Philip Larkin delivers his final verdict on modern life, which are secular, liberated, yet spiritual barren. His poetry moves from the small moments of English life, as in the Whitsun wedding, toward cosmic isolation and existential reflection. While deeply pessimistic, these poems also possess a strange clarity and honesty. Larkin's refusal to romanticize or idealize gives his work lasting power. Ultimately, High Windows stands as a mirror to disenchanted 20th century, where the search of meaning end not in revelation but in clear, endless blue emptiness. Right? Now, we should discuss Larkin's significance and legacy. So, Philip Larkin is often described as England's national poet of post-war disillusionment. He captured the everyday life of ordinary people with unmatched sincerity. His rejection of modernist obscurity restored the accessibility of British poetry. In 2003, he was voted the nation's best loved poet in a poll conducted by the Poetry Book Society. Critics like Andrew Motion, his biographer, have noted that Larkin's poem reveal a life of quiet despair turned into art of quiet brilliance. Philip Larkin's greatness lies not in grandeur or abstraction, but in this honest portrayal of the ordinary. He turned the mundane details of English life into the profound reflection of human existence. Through irony, simplicity, and restraint, he reminds us that beauty can exist even in loneliness, and meaning can be found in trivial. So he wrote in days, what are the days? 4 days are where we live. So the line, simple yet deeply philosophical, sums up the essence of Larkin's poetic world. Right? So, in conclusion, I think this is more than sufficient for the discussion on Philip Larkin. In conclusion, I must say Philip Larkin stands as a poet who transformed the ordinary into the extraordinary. He gave voice to the quiet truths of human existence, the loneliness, the passage of time, the fear of death, and the rare, fleeting moments of love and connection. His poetry does not promise comfort or grandeur. His poetry does not promise comfort and grandeur. Instead, it mirrors life as it is. Like, it's honest, it's unembellished, and profoundly real. So, through his sharp observation and emotional restraint, Larkin reminds us that poetry needs not shout to be powerful. Sometimes the most truthful lines are spoken in whispers. His legacy endures because he taught us to find beauty in simplicity and meaning in mundane, to look closely at life and see the poetry within. So thank you so much for being here. अगर आपको फिर भी कोई क्वेरी लगती है, although I have mentioned each and every detail about Philip Larkin, but still, if you still have any queries, so comment section is always available for you. So next class में हम फिलिप लार्किन की selected poems को पढ़ेंगे जो हमारे syllabus में है. तो चलिए मिलते हैं next class में. Thank you so much. Good night.